let's get into our predictions for this game. We'll start with the offensive player of the game. And I mentioned it too when we were talking about some of the prize picks projections, but I do think Blake Corum, they're going to lean on him a lot in this game, as they should. And, as they usually do, really, over the last year plus. But I'm going to go with a little bit of an off-the-wall pick. And not off the wall, but a little unusual pick, just because I want to give the guys up front a little bit of love. I want to give this one and predict that Drake Nugent's going to have a really good game. Rutgers is creative up front. He's going to have to play well. They tilt their nose guard in there in the A gap and try to make it tough on the center. And I think he's going to respond well in this game. Jim Harbaugh said, I think after the UNLV game, that he's been their best offensive lineman to this point. And there hasn't been a ton of, some people were criticizing a couple things, and a couple plays really weren't his fault. But it's been pretty smooth sailing in there at center so far, and I think he's going to step up to the plate again this week.
Did you have a score? Are we predicting?
The offensive player of the game score?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Offensive player of the game. Well, I saw final score predictions up there. I thought you were doing them both at the same time. So, offensive player of the game, I'm going with J.J. McCarthy to have a great bounce back game. I think he's going to come out slinging it and run some really nice play action on Saturday. I'm not so sure that Rutgers has what it takes in the secondary to deal with a guy like McCarthy, and I expect him to play his best game of the year, and that's saying something.
Blake Corum all the way back this weekend. It was about this time last year. Similar stats. Through the early part of this year, 37 carries, 254 yards, 6 touchdowns. 6.9 yards per carry. That's nice. We'd like to see that in those first 3 games. And then he comes out in that opener against Maryland, 243 yards, 2 touchdowns. To predict that would be crazy, but I think that it's clear to me he's Michigan's top running back right now. And I think that with that, what I believe to be a stabilizing move on the offensive line, I think that Michigan's going to come out with something to prove this week, and Blake Corum's at the forefront of that. So Blake Corum is my pick.
I like it. I like both picks. Defensive player of the game, I'm going to go with Junior Colson. I think Rutgers is going to try to run the football and shorten the game. It just feels like one of those games where Junior Colson cleans up with 11, 12 tackles or something like that. I know that's what percentage of plays will that be, especially if they try to shorten the game. But I think Junior Colson is going to have a nice game in there, stopping the run, making some tackles on some of those short passes.
I think it's a great pick. And I'll go with Mike Barrett. I think you're going to see him make a couple plays in the passing game as well. And we saw him last year against Rutgers, right, with a couple of interceptions, and he'll be key there. So Mike Barrett owns Rutgers, and he's going to own them again this year.
Well, if Gavin Wimsatt has to throw or make some kind of play in order for Rutgers to be in this game, I feel like that means an interception or two is going to be up for grabs. And I'm going with a New Jersey kid to grab it and have another good game. Keon Saab. It's my pick for this week. So I feel like even as the secondary gets healthier, we're going to see him have a pretty substantial role in that safety rotation. And I think Saab plays a real nice game this weekend.
I like it. Final score, our staff predictions by the time you listen to this are up over at thewolverine.com. So go read that article. As always, we'll have Doug Skeen's pick in there, John Borton's pick, as well as all of ours. Tough one here. I went with 35-10 Michigan. I do think Rutgers maybe breaks a long run or hits a big play to set themselves up and score 1 touchdown. But I don't see much more than that. And I think Michigan might get a couple turnovers themselves. I think Michigan's going to be able to move the football. So I got 35-10. And I do want to note, too, we didn't mention it earlier, but Rutgers has a pretty decent kicker. He hit a 51-yarder earlier in the year. He was Big Ten Special Teams Player of the Week, had a 40-something in that same game. So, he might be able to get them on the board with the field goal. So I'm going to go 35-10.
Yeah, I'm going to go 30-13. I think 3 field goals, 3 touchdowns for Michigan. I think Rutgers, because they have the good kicker, they'll get a long field goal or 2 to go with their touchdown. But Michigan wins relatively comfortably.
For whatever reason, 41 has been the number in my brain since the year started, so I'm sticking with it. I'm going to say Michigan wins 41-14. I think that the head honcho being back this week and the offense coming off the performance that it had, I expect this team to come out with its hair on fire, even if it gets punched in the mouth a little bit early and our message board goes crazy. Michigan wins big, and I think this will be in my bold predictions tomorrow when that comes out. Michigan will have a defensive or special teams touchdown in this game.
I like it. All right, well, let's move on to No Man Knows the Future, final segment. And as we said at the top, an absolutely elite slate this weekend. It's one of those college football weekends that you think about, in April and May and June, and you're like, all right, when's the football season coming? This is kind of what you talk about. Last week, maybe you go, you do the cider thing. ABN, you did that a couple weeks ago, right? You go to the, you go do the whole girlfriend thing and that whole thing. I don't really,
Which I'm happy to do, by the way, on the record.
Fair. Yeah. Okay. She must listen then. But this is one of those weekends where I know we'll be working and, it's a little bit tougher, but you stay in your house or you go to the bar, you go to a friend's house and you are watching football pretty much wall to wall all day long. Let's start out with one in the ACC, Florida State at Clemson. Clemson, a 2-point underdog at home, over under 55. Give me Clemson in this game. I just think them being at home, them getting written off after the Duke game, them getting a little more comfortable with their offense too under new coordinator Garrett Riley. Sometimes it takes a few weeks. I think they're going to pull this off, and they could meet again towards the end of the year there.
Yeah, it's kind of their season, right? After what happened in the first game. So playing at home, Florida State, boy, they were lucky to win last week, frankly. So yeah. I like Clemson as well. I like Clemson to win this game.
I think that Clemson and Dabo Swinney are two of the biggest frauds, one collective fraud in this current landscape of college football, and I expect Florida State to roll.
Wow.
So going Florida State.
I wouldn't hurt my feelings, I'll be honest. I don't mind being wrong. So people do not bet your houses on these picks. It's not like we sit there and have a machine here that we run these through. Maybe Clay does. Clay's plays, but not the rest of us.
Trust me, I do not.
No man fades the future.
Right, exactly.
It's true. Yeah, trust me, I've done okay so far this year on what I've actually bet responsibly, but that is the other shoe's going to drop at some point. I'm pretty sure. Colorado at Oregon. Oregon, a 21-point favorite, over under 68.5. Oregon rolls. Oregon absolutely rolls. Colorado hasn't played a team yet that's going to be as physical and really is as good as that, and I think that they roll.
Yeah, something like 49-28 or something like that. So it'll be close to that spread, but I'm going to go with Oregon to cover. And you know what? If they don't, and if Colorado plays them tough, then Colorado will have earned my respect.
Yeah, and for all the talk of how well Deion Sanders has done, this is just a leagues ahead of what he's had to face and what they've had to face so far this year. Shedeur Sanders is that dude. I think if they're going to stay in this game, it has everything to do with him, but not enough horses yet. I think Oregon rolls in this one.
Yeah, I think he's going to get hit a lot too, but he is fantastic. Ole Miss at Alabama. Alabama 6.5-point favorite. Over under is 55.5. I got Ole Miss. I don't know. Texas comes in there. They did what they did, and then Alabama shows up flat at USF last week. I don't know. It just feels like something's not right at Alabama. They're switching their quarterback again. I'm going to go with Lane Kiffin. I know you don't usually go with the former Saban assistant, but we saw one in Sark come in and win. I'm going to go with another one to at least cover against Alabama.
Yeah, something we didn't mention about the last game too, Travis Hunter being out, right? So
yeah,
that's gonna really hurt Colorado in that game as well. So for some reason, I'm not going to bet against Alabama here. I think Nick Saban's going to right the ship here. I think they're going to come out angry playing an SEC foe. And I think that Nick Saban's going to have something to prove and that he takes it out on Lane Kiffin. I like Alabama to cover.
I like Ole Miss here. There's something about this Alabama team that has like a 2017 Michigan energy to it from the quarterback stuff. I don't think... and this is a little bit different from that situation, but it's weird to see them struggle at quarterback. And then also they're just not as good up front as they have been, both on the offensive and defensive lines. So I like Ole Miss to cover that number. They might win outright, but Alabama looks like a 3-loss team to me right now.
This isn't really included in the elite slate, but Maryland at Michigan State, it's interesting given what's going on. It's a division game. Michigan State 7.5-point underdogs at home, over under 52.5. Embarrassed last week against Washington. And I don't think Maryland's going to embarrass them, but I do think they'll win by a couple scores, and that has them covering the number.
Yeah, I think that probably last week took the wind out of their sails up there in East Lansing. And, once Mel is officially fired, then that thing's going to just absolutely fall apart. And I just think guys are probably already eyeing their next opportunities, frankly, fair or not. So I like Maryland to cover as well.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Michigan State cover. I guess just for entertainment's sake, I'll say that's going to happen because this is kind of their last-ditch effort. Like when Mel is officially fired next week, because the letter that came out this week was the notice of an intent to fire with him having 7 days to respond. The portal's open, and I think that there will be an exodus of guys. So I think this is kind of their last-ditch effort. Maryland is classic for playing down to teams. The last 2 weeks went down 14-0 early, both to Virginia and Charlotte as well, and kind of hit the accelerator. So I don't know. I feel like this is kind of it. This is kind of it for Michigan State. So I'll pick them to cover, but I'm least confident pick of the week.
Yeah, and some guys that may want to leave have one more game to play in before they lose their eligibility. So it's really going to get interesting, I think, in East Lansing. Ohio State at Notre Dame, game of the day, I would say. Night game, Notre Dame, 3-point underdog in South Bend, over under 55.5. And it's kind of interesting with a matchup like this. I mean, Ohio State, one, they don't usually have a spread that's this close unless they're in the playoff. But two, they typically have the better quarterback in just about every big game they play. So you can say, oh, someone's going to upset them. And Michigan has been underdogs and beaten them the last 2 years. But this is the first time where I think the other team has the better signal caller. I'm going to go with Sam Hartman and Notre Dame to win at home.
Yeah, it's just a tough one, right? I think
really tough.
It is. I think Ohio State's going to run the ball on them a little bit, and I think they're going to bully them a little bit. And that defense of theirs has played pretty well, as you noted last week. So for some reason, I'm picking Ohio State. This is my least optimistic pick of the week, but for some reason, I just think the Buckeyes are going to pull it out up there.
I'll go Buckeyes as well, on the heels of, Notre Dame might have the best quarterback, but I think Ohio State will have the best player on the field in Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he has a big game under the lights, and maybe Michigan struggles a little bit at times with Rutgers or doesn't look the way that the fans want them to. Then Ohio State wins, and then we can kick off a several-week existential crisis on the board in the lead up to the Ohio State game.
Oh, God. Okay. I'm going to prepare myself for that. Last one. Another interesting one, Iowa at Penn State. Penn State 15-point favorites at home. This is the whiteout game, over under a whopping 40 points. Iowa's kind of had their number. I know it's a different type of Penn State team. Didn't love what I saw from Penn State. I know they forced a bunch of turnovers. That Illinois quarterback is god-awful. No offense to him if he's listening. And I think that they're going to get some resistance with this Iowa defense, which I like. I don't know how much Iowa is going to be able to score, but I think Iowa keeps it within the 15. I like that. It's outside of 2 scores, so they'll keep it fairly close.
I think I read that they have a ton of injuries, if I'm not mistaken. A couple running backs, maybe a tight end down. So
Lestray's out.
Yeah, so I don't like Iowa to score a whole lot in this game. I see something like 23-6 game or a 21-6. Of course, with the 15, it kind of matters, right? Which one I pick. So, I'm going to go with Penn State to cover just barely in an ugly game.
Well, back in our prize pick segment, I picked Drew Aller to throw more than half an interception, and I'll take it a step further and say Iowa makes this a game by not only turning him over, but also returning it for a touchdown, which is something they specialize in. So I'm going to go Hawkeyes here. Lest we forget, Cade McNamara has won in that building before. So not saying they'll win, but I think they are going to put up a fight, and we're going to find out what both of those teams are made of.
Yeah, and Cade finally has a defense that can score, so that's nice. So that's the slate. There are also many other good games, so I know everybody will be kind of glued to the TV. But noon on Saturday, Michigan and Rutgers. That's the real big game of the weekend. And make sure to get all of your coverage over at thewolverine.com. $1 for your first month for new subscribers. Again, like this video if you're excited about Jim Harbaugh's return to the sideline. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we will see everyone next time.